everyone. We have a very special treat in store for you today. I am Zoe, your hostess with the mostest with Celebration Magazine Live, and we have 149 people registered for today. I want to take a minute and I want to thank our sponsor, North Dallas Bank and Trust. Without them, we would not have been able to welcome Blackland Prairie Raptor Center with us. So before we begin our program, I am going to ask Daniel, I'm going to bring him up on screen with me. And Daniel, tell us about what you do over there.
Well, not to toot my own horn, but it was my birthday yesterday. So I'm going to go talking about that too.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. We're excited to be on here. And yes, I'm Daniel. I'm the marketing director at North Dallas Bank and Trust. We are the oldest bank by name in the greater North Dallas area. I'm headquartered over Preston and LBJ, and some of you have met before at Live, Laugh, and Learn and other events in the past. And glad we have an opportunity to come and say hi to you, even though it's virtual. I think it'll be kind of cool today to learn about birds. I like animals, and I used to work at the zoo a long time ago, so I'm excited about this.
Well, I learned something I didn't know before. That's really cool. Daniel, really quick, tell our friends with us today about your Celebration account, not affiliated with Celebration Magazine, but tell them about the Celebration account.
Sure. Thanks real quick about that. We have a successful account that we've run that we call Celebration Checking. And with that, we have person features that are available that oftentimes appeal to people that we say are 55 or better. And so we offer that account up, and we do normally do coordinated events in conjunction with Celebration Magazine, obviously into the future. But during a non-COVID situation, we would have structured events that our participants can be a part of that we organize in conjunction with the checking account. And to learn more about that, of course, we have our website, which is ndbt.com. Learn more about that account, but it's something that's been very successful for us, and we're one of the few banks that still have those available to customers just from an interaction and engagement standpoint.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing that information with us. You can find more information about North Dallas Bank and Trust in Celebration Magazine or on our website, or as Daniel said, at www.ndbt.com. And you're right, Daniel, it isn't something that's, I remember being a kid and getting my first account, and they used to do all these cool special events for their account holders. And that is a rare thing to find anymore. So make sure if you're looking for a bank with some personalized service, most definitely check them out. Well, Daniel, thank you so much once again for joining us and sponsoring today. That being said, it is now time. We are going to turn things over to our friends at the Blackland Prairie Raptor Center. We have Elizabeth Carter here with us today, and she is an education manager there. Take it away, Elizabeth.
Great, thank you so much, Zoe. Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in from home today. We're excited to be with you.
Oh, hang on. Wait, I'm so sorry. I meant to mute myself and accidentally muted you, Elizabeth. I apologize.
There we go. Better?
Sorry.
Okay. I don't know what you heard, but anyway, thank you all for tuning in today from home. Hopefully next time we can be in person. But what's really cool about today is we can get the birds right up close to the computer screen, so kind of even closer than you would be able to see them in person. But anyway, yes, my name's Elizabeth. I'm the education manager here at the Raptor Center, and I have Karen with me here today. Come on, just so they can see you. Karen's one of our volunteers, so she's going to be helping me out today as well. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are, what our organization is, and what our mission is. So our main mission is the conservation of North Texas native raptors. And so we're trying to help out their species in any way possible, because they are an extremely important part of our environment. They're at the top of the food chain. They're nature's pest control. They're helping control all those things that get overpopulated towards the bottom of the food chain. So we do that in a few different ways. The first way is through rehabilitation. So we are a specialized raptor clinic. And so we take in sick, injured, and orphaned raptors into our hospital. So if you ever find any, call us. We can help you out. We can take them. And our mission is to get them back out into the wild. And they come to us for a bunch of different reasons. One of the main things is that they get hit by cars. They run into windows. They get poisoned. They get shot. They get caught in barbed wire. They get caught in glue traps. Most of the reasons why we have raptors come into our hospital are human related. There's something because humans put out into the environment, something that we did to cause them to be injured or sick. And so because of that, we're a place that can help solve those issues. And so we try to get them back out where they belong. And then the second part is through education. So that's what we're doing here today. We have non-releasable raptors that we use for education purposes. So they have something that is wrong with them. They either have a physical injury or more of a mental issue that they cannot live in the wild on their own. They can't survive, so they have to be in human care for the rest of their lives. But now they have a job. They have a purpose, and that purpose is to educate the public about their species and how we can help them and why we should all care about them. So we have 4 that we're going to show you here today, and we'll tell you what's wrong with each one of them when we bring them out. But we have them because we have state and federal permits from the government that allow us to keep these birds in our care and use them for education purposes. All these birds are protected through the state and federally, so none of these can be pet birds. They're all with us at our organization because of our permits. And then the last part is conservation through their habitat. So if there's no place for them to live or any place to release these birds, then what's the point, right? There needs to be a place for them to go. So the Blackland Prairie is the native ecosystem, which probably a lot of you are familiar with, in this area in North Texas. It used to extend up closer to the Red River, down through the Dallas area, and then a corridor down through Austin and all the way to the kind of the tip ends at San Antonio. And unfortunately, it's in a very endangered habitat, and only less than 1% of it is left. And we are located in Lucas, Texas, just east of Allen, and we have 66 acres, and we are trying to restore as much of our property back to its natural state, back to that Blackland Prairie habitat, tall native grasses and wildflowers, and the prime place for all of our native plants and animals to live. So that's our mission, is conservation through rehabilitation and education of North Texas native raptors. And we are a nonprofit, and we mainly run on volunteers. We have 3 staff members, and the rest of our crew is about 30 consistent weekly volunteers that help run this place. And we do rely on private donations as our main source of funding. So if y'all are interested, you can check us out more on our website. But we want to get to it. Also, I'm going to be asking questions throughout the presentation, so you guys can type answers in the chat and I can look at them. But if you have questions, put them in there, and then Zoe will be the question monitor. So she'll let me know when there's questions. Okay, so what is a raptor? I keep saying that word over and over and over. Who can tell me what is a raptor? Just quickly put it in the chat if y'all know what a raptor is. See if we get anything here. A hunter, meat eater, bird of prey, has claws. Yes, very good. So a raptor is a bird of prey, and they're actually they are specific types of birds of prey because there are a ton of different birds of prey. A pelican is considered a bird of prey, right? Because it eats meat. A mockingbird could be considered a bird of prey because it eats insects. So a bird of prey is any bird that eats other living things. So there's tons of different types of birds of prey, but raptors are very specific types. The word raptor actually comes from a Latin word that means to grab. So that's what makes raptors very special, is the way they obtain their food. Most birds obtain their food by using their beak to pick it up. The raptors, they all use their feet first. So someone said they have claws. Karen's gonna hold up a large picture of a raptor foot. Come closer. And this is a great horned owl foot. So all raptors have feet that look like this. This is what makes them special, is this adaptation. So they have super strong feet for grabbing and killing live prey, and they have sharp curved talons. They These talons are made up of the exact same material that our toenails and fingernails are made up of, which is keratin. Obviously, it's a lot stronger and denser, so that's why it's a much darker color than our toenails. And on the bottom of their feet, they have these little bumps called spicules, and those spicules help to grip onto that wiggly food or to help hold themselves onto branches or perches, especially on a windy or stormy day. So that's the first adaptation that all raptors have that make them special. And then the next one is once they have that food in their talons, they use their beak, a specialized beak that only raptors have, sharp curved beak. This edge is like a knife's edge. It's like a razor blade, super sharp. They can naturally sharpen it on different rough surfaces like tree bark and rocks out in the wild. And all raptors have this specialized tool to tear and rip open their food. That beak is also made up of the same thing that the talons are made up of, which is keratin. And they just naturally wear it down, wear it away in the wild and sharpen it. In captivity, however, they don't have all the same things, so we have to give them toenail trims and beak trims every few times a year to help them out here. So what are some, now that we know what a raptor is, what are some raptors that y'all have seen maybe in your neighborhoods, in the towns and parks where you are? If you want to write a few answers in the chat here, just different types of raptors that we have in Texas. Red-tailed hawk, owls, eagles, vultures. Very good. What about the speedy ones, the fast raptors? It's the only one we're missing. Falcon, yes. Very good. Yes, so we have falcons, hawks, vultures, owls, and eagles. As someone said, kara, yes. Very good. Kara is actually mostly related to falcons, but they kind of act, their behavior is more like a vulture. You see them a lot of times with vultures. Cooper's hawk, yes, very good. Vultures are still considered a raptor, even though they're not a true raptor, because what do vultures eat? Dead stuff, right? Carrion. They eat things that get killed on the roadways or things that just naturally die out in the wild. Their feet don't look like that poster. They kind of have flat, floppy feet because they don't need to hunt, squeeze, and kill their prey, right? Because it's just laying there waiting for them. So scientists have actually determined that genetically they're more related to storks than other raptors, but now they're still taxonomically in the raptor family, and we still take them into our rehab center. And we love vultures because they're super smart. They're nature's recyclers, right? They decompose and eat all those carcasses that are out there collecting disease and bacteria. So they help clean all that up. So we love vultures because of that. Yes. So now, what are some other things? Yes.
Let me interrupt with a question real quick, because this is actually pretty relevant to what you're talking about. So yes. Daniel asked, what's your advice for people that are trying to poison mice and rats? Because someone like the vulture obviously could eat those dead animals, and will other raptors also eat the carrion?
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of raptors are opportunistic. If they can't catch something that's alive, they're not going to starve. They're going to eat. If there's something dead, absolutely, they're going to go after other things. So rodenticide is a huge problem. We get a ton of raptors in that we suspect have been poisoned. It causes internal bleeding, and it is really, really hard to treat unless you catch it super early, and it's not a severe case. So what happens is people use rat poison, and then the mice or the rats don't die right away. They just kind of get a little sickly and slow, and they still are outside walking around, just maybe a little slower before they die. And that's an easy meal, right? For anyone, for any of the raptors. So they'll go after that. And unfortunately, they get poisoned too. So the solution, we say, are the snap traps that kill them right away, or a live trap. Glue traps are not good because a mouse gets stuck on a glue trap. And then a screech owl actually gets stuck on that glue trap too, going after the mouse. We've had great horned owls and screech owls get stuck on glue traps as well. And those things can be really, really sticky. Snakes get stuck on them all the time. And it's just a really terrible way to die because they're just starving. They're trying to pull themselves off the glue trap. It's awful. So yeah, the best thing, if you're trying to get rid of pests like rats and mice are those snap traps or live traps. Absolutely. Okay, so what do raptors eat? Raptors will basically eat anything that is smaller than they are. Like I said, they're opportunistic. So they will eat any other live animal. So depending on their size is what their food is going to be. So raptors come in all different shapes and sizes, which you'll see. So they'll eat anything from skunks and rabbits and squirrels, all the way down to small mammals like mice and lizards and insects. They'll eat snakes and frogs. They'll eat all kinds of stuff. So they really help control all of those populations that can get overwhelming. So Karen is going to show us our first raptor, and this is the smallest one that we're going to show you by weight. And I think she's ready to come on screen here. And I'm going to step off screen and still talk just so we can try to get her up as close as possible so y'all can see her. Okay, why don't you turn her a little bit so they can see her wings and tail there, get a nice full body shot. So who wants to guess what family or what kind of raptor this is? See if anyone says it in the chat. What we think she might be. Either someone said red-tailed hawk, peregrine, hawk, peregrine. We're closest with the peregrine. Get her as close as possible. So you were close with peregrine. She is in the falcon family. She's not a peregrine. It's hard to tell. It's a little hard to judge size on here, but she's much smaller than a peregrine falcon is. She is an American kestrel. And American kestrels are the smallest species of falcon in North America. And she has a little tidbit of food that she rejected. So, oh, she just roused. So that's called a rouse, and that's when birds lift up all the feathers on their body, shake them out and put it back down. Birds can control every single feather on their entire body. They have a muscle attached to each one, which is pretty amazing. That's like if we could move every single piece of hair on our whole body. So she does that to either get rid of some dust or dander. She does it when she's comfortable, when she feels relaxed. So that's a good thing. But in the wild, they would do it to shake out any parasites that they might have on them, or they can lift them up, kind of air out their feathers. And then also they can lock in all their feathers and look all big and fluffy, like back in the freeze in February. If y'all saw a bunch of poofy looking birds, that's how they keep warm. They kind of stick their feathers out and lock them in together, and that creates a warm pocket of air near their vital organs to keep their body as warm as possible in extreme cold temperatures. So falcons, like I mentioned earlier, are the speed demons of the raptor world. She's going to show off her wings there a little bit. So falcons are built for speed. So their bodies are shaped a lot differently than the other raptors because of that. So they have long angled wings for agility in the sky, and they have a long narrow tail. If you want to turn her around, hold her sideways again. Just make sure you keep her here, yeah. You can just keep her like this the whole time, kind of sideways, but you can. You get out of the frame and just hold her, yeah, like that. Very nice. Okay, so they are built for speed and agility. So they're typically hunting things that are flying. That's why they're built that way. Most falcons, their main source of food are other birds. So they have to be faster than those other birds to catch them. American kestrels specifically are super common in this area, and most of North America as well. You can see them a lot of times in open fields, along country roads, along the telephone wire. They like to hunt over an open farmland or grassland. So the Blackland Prairie is the perfect type of habitat for them. Other than birds, like starlings and sparrows, they love to eat mice and insects, especially flying insects like grasshoppers and cicadas. So you'll see them hunting for insects over grass too. They also like to hover a lot in the wind. So you see them up there hovering, flapping their wings. So another distinct adaptation or characteristic of kestrels and of other falcons are those black stripes under her eyes, and those are called malar stripes. those mallard stripes are a really easy field characteristic to identify these guys. And they're there because to help them see better where they're going, to see, especially if they have to look up if they're flying. And it's kind of the same reason why football players and baseball players, don't give her a piece of food for them. Football players and baseball players put eye black under their eyes. So it's to help absorb the glare of the sun and to deflect the glare of the sun. Because raptors can't put on sunglasses or hats like we can, right? So especially they're hunting in areas that are open with no shade, not many trees around. So that's why they have that. And then on the back of their heads, you can kind of see it with her. She has these spots on the back of her head. And this is how big as she gets. She is just over 4 ounces. So she weighs about roll of a toilet paper. And so she's really small. So a larger raptor would absolutely have her for lunch if they could, like a big red-tailed hawk or a peregrine falcon. And so those black spots on the back of her head kind of mimic eyes, eye spots, just like other animals have. A lot of caterpillars, butterflies have those. And so that's kind of to help defend off predators. So
why she's here.
Why do we have her? So she has more of a mental issue. She came to us into a rehab center, and it was pretty obvious that she could not be released because she was not scared of us. She did not have a fear of humans. She was approaching us and begging for food. So we knew right away that someone had been raising her. And unfortunately, this happens a lot. People find baby birds, animals on the ground, usually when they had just leave the nest and they're still learning how to survive in the wild. They're learning from their parents how to hunt, how to protect themselves, and where to live. And usually there's nothing wrong with them. They just need a few days to grow in their flight feathers and work up their muscles and their strength for flying. And someone took her in, typically with good intentions. People try to help these guys out, but unfortunately they did more harm than they realized, and they imprinted her on people. So because of that, that's an irreversible mental issue. She'll always be comfortable around people. And that will not serve her well for living in the wild. If we released her, she would starve. She wouldn't know where to find food, how to hunt, where to live, and she would just fly up to people looking for food because that's what she's learned. That's all she's known. When birds are at that young stage, nestling and fledgling stage, that's when they learn everything. And if they don't learn those life survival skills at that age, then they never can. So that's why we have her. So physically, there's nothing wrong with her. She's just a human imprint. So, and I keep saying she is special. Kestrels are special because you can tell whether they're male or female just by looking at them. We know she's a female based on her plumage or her feather coloration. She has those nice brown streaks on her chest and brown and black striping down her wings and her tail. A male kestrel, actually I have a picture of one, so if you want to step back with her for a second. A male kestrel looks like this. So quite a bit different than she does, much more bright colors, not as much brown streaking, much more bright orange and blue colors. Only about 5% of raptors you can tell the difference whether they're male or female just by looking at them. The other 95% you cannot tell. The only other way to tell is by their size, and females in the raptor world are typically 30% larger than males. So if you see two bald eagles sitting next to each other and one is a lot bigger than the other, that's the female. And we think the females in the raptor world are bigger than the males because they're the ones defending the nest. They can catch bigger prey items for their young, and they don't have to compete with the same food items that the male does. The male can go after smaller things and the female can go after larger things, so they're not competing for the same food in the same territory. Okay, you want to put her up? All right, any other questions about our kestrel, about our falcon?
I don't see any right now, but I actually have one. How old is she?
She is
Best
5 years
guess.
old. She hatched in 2016. And if they come in as adults, then we have no idea how old they
Right,
are.
right.
Sometimes the eye doctor can tell us based on a certain thing in their eyes. But yeah, we don't know if they come in as adult, but she came in as a first year. So that's the only reason.
Oh,
And
wow.
she'll live in the wild. Kestrels only live about 5 to 7 years.
Mhm.
But in captivity, they can live a lot longer because they don't have any predators to worry about. They get fed every day. They go to the vet all the time. So they're really well taken care of here. So we had a kestrel that lived up to 19 years with us. So that's a really long time.
Does she have a name?
Her name is Cleopatra.
Oh.
And yes, we name them for our purposes just because we like to give them names, but they don't recognize their name.
Right,
Yeah.
right. All right, I don't see any other questions right now, so I think we can move on to our next guest.
Awesome. And on the topic of lifespans, while we're waiting for the next bird, the general rule for raptors is that it's kind of the opposite of dogs. The smaller the raptor, the shorter the lifespan, and the bigger the raptor, the longer the lifespan. And we think that's mainly because of predators. If you're a smaller raptor, you have a lot more predators. If you're a large raptor, like a bald eagle or a great horned owl, you don't really have any other predators. So there's not much you have to worry about. But those kestrels will have a lot more predators. Okay.
So real quick, someone did just ask,
Yes.
so is she like a chicken? Will she lay eggs without having a male?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 birds, 4 female birds in our education program that lay eggs every year. And yeah, they're not fertilized because they don't have a male. They don't live with a male. They all live on their own. We don't have a permit to breed them. You need a separate propagation permit in order to have fertilized eggs for raptors. But yes, absolutely. So when they feel more content in their environment, when they feel comfortable enough, they will produce eggs and lay eggs. So we have 4 females that are doing that right now.
And I'm sure she has a safe area that she can fly and be a bird.
Actually, behind me in the store, right behind me is a hallway where all of their aviaries are. And so they all have a large space with a bunch of different perches so they can fly around, get plenty of exercise. Yes, be out in the weather and the sun and the rain.
Wonderful. Okay.
Okay, next bird. Okay, so she's slightly bigger than the kestrel, and she's another daytime hunter, so she's active during the day. So she's a diurnal raptor, just like that kestrel. And let's see if anyone has a guess about what kind of bird this is, because we do have a ton of them here in North Texas. They're all over the place, but a lot of people, for some reason, don't know them, and everyone should know them because we get so many. So let's see if we get any guesses here. Killer dove. So they do kind of look like pigeons because of their coloration. They have that nice gray and blackish color, so a lot of people do think they guess that she's a pigeon because of that. Pigeon hawk, that's a good guess. Ooh, someone said kite, you got it. Yes, she is a Mississippi kite. Mississippi kites are really special raptors. They're kind of in their own category of raptors. They're not really part of those 5 categories we talked about. They're probably mostly related to a hawk, but we have the Mississippi kite here in North Texas, and then down in Galveston, we have the swallow-tailed kite and the white-tailed kite down on the coast. But here in this part, we have the Mississippi, but they're only here in the spring and summer. So they should be showing up right about now. We've had a few sightings of these guys. They migrate to and from South America, more specifically Argentina, every spring and fall. So they make that 7,000-mile journey twice a year, which is amazing.
Wow.
And that's because they have to follow their food. It's not necessarily because they can't survive in cold climates, but more reason that they have to follow their food. These guys are insectivores. I would say 90% of their diet are insects. And so there aren't many insects here in Dallas in the winter, so they have to fly south to find them. So kites are very active flyers. You can see she's flapping her wings, she's rowing a lot, she's exercising, she's expending all of that energy. Kites during the day, they'll be up in the air most of the day. They use the wind to get up there and kind of just hang and float in the wind. And that's why they're called kites, because they fly just like a kite. They use the wind to hang up there and soar, so they don't have to constantly flap and use a ton of energy. And what their favorite food are flying insects. And so we get a ton of cicadas here in the summer in this area. And so that's mainly what they're feasting on, are all those giant cicadas. And what's really cool about kites that no other raptor can do is that they catch their food in the air, which other raptors like falcons and hawks can do every once in a while. But what they also do is once they catch that food with their feet, they can eat it on wing as well. So they can fly and eat at the exact same time, which is really cool. All other raptors have to grab their food and take it to a perch or down to the ground or somewhere else to eat it, but she can eat it while she's flying. Kites are also social raptors, which is pretty rare. Most raptors don't like to be with other raptors because that means you have to share food sources and territories, and they don't like doing that. They want to have their own territory, their own land, of their own food. But kites don't care because insects are everywhere. So they are very social. They will migrate to and from South America in large groups together. And then once they are here for their breeding season, they will nest in colonies. So they'll have a stand of trees, maybe with 3 or 4 nests and a few pairs of kites hanging around together. So that's another really cool thing. And she's also here with us because she's a human imprint. Kites breed all over our neighborhoods. I guarantee you where you guys are living, you have a nice stand of oak trees somewhere, you probably have kites in the summer. And they end up on the ground a lot. When they're leaving the nest, they build nests really high in the trees. So people find their fledglings on the ground all the time, take them in. So same type of thing what happened with Cleo or Kestrel. And because they are social, they're also really easy to imprint. So even if you just take them in for a day or two, they can lose their fear of people pretty quickly, unfortunately. So that's why we have her as well. What else am I missing about
They look
Missy
different
here?
in their first year.
Yeah, so this is what the adult looks like, typical adult. She was hatched in 2017. All the adults look like this. You can't tell whether she's a male or female just by looking. We had to do a DNA blood test on her, determine that she is a female. And we could kind of guess by her weight that she was a female because she was a little larger. However, sometimes those weight ranges overlap, so it's not the best way to determine that. So the DNA test really is the best. But the juveniles, the first years, look a lot different. People sometimes think they're different species altogether because they look so different. They are more of a cream color with a ton of brown streaking all over their chest and their wings. So they look a lot different. But yeah, look for these guys. So I guarantee they should be flying up around our neighborhoods any day now. They're all over the place.
Okay, we're done.
She is so cute. So of course we want to know her name.
Her name is Missy, not a very creative or original name, but because she's a Mississippi Kite, but Missy.
And, go ahead. What is the lifespan of a kite?
Lifespan is probably not too much longer than the Kestrel. Again, she's not that much bigger, so maybe a year or two longer, so maybe 6 to 8 years, 7 to 9 years in the wild. But then in captivity, she can live double or almost triple that.
Wow. Okay, this is a really great question. So if you get a rescued chick, how do you keep them from imprinting on you guys?
Very good question. So we actually have to wear camouflage. So we totally disguise ourselves. So we put camo on, we put a big hood over, head cloth over our face and gloves, big camo gloves on. So we try to look like a tree as much as possible. We just don't want to look like a person.
Right.
Any way we can disguise ourselves from looking like a person, we try to when we're feeding them. And we also don't talk, because even if they hear our voices, they can imprint on sounds, our voices, and our looks. So we're totally silent, put camo on. especially while we're feeding them. If we're doing other things like grabbing them for medical checks or grabbing them to weigh them, that's not as big of a deal because that's more of a negative interaction. But if you're feeding a baby animal, that's when they're like, oh, you're feeding me, so you're my mom, or you're what I'm supposed to be. So that's really the critical point. So yeah, that's how we avoid it, is we just avoid all human anything, any looks, any sounds. We try to get them as far away outside as possible and keep them as far away from any sort of human activity.
Okay, wow. That's quite the process, and it's amazing. So do raptors make sounds, and if so, when?
Yes, I did see someone just asked about the imprinting
gloves?
thing again real fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just, since we're on that topic. So we also have foster parents. So we use some of our education birds as fosters. We have a great horned owl, a barred owl, and a barn owl. And we put them out in rehab during baby season, and we put the babies with them. So at least they have someone of their own kind that they can look at, and they can look at, learn their behaviors and hear the sounds of an adult of their same kind. So we use foster parents as well. And we are in the process, our rehab manager wants to make puppets. And so we're using taxidermied carcasses of other raptors as with their heads to use puppets to try to feed babies as well. So yeah, we're trying to do everything we can to avoid imprinting. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Okay. So the
ahead.
sounds, yeah, so all raptors make sounds just like a lot of songbirds. You can identify them by their sound if you don't see them in the wild. So for example, I can play you the kite sound because you should be hearing this pretty soon. So I'll try to hold the, oh, why doesn't it have it on here? I'll play the Kestrel sound really fast, and then I'll get to the kite sound. Here's the Kestrel. So raptors make more calls than, oh, that triggered one of our Kestrels to start calling. Raptors make more calls than songs. They don't really sing like songbirds do, but they definitely communicate, and they all have different calls that they make depending on their species.
That's great.
And I'll play you another one, but I want to talk about her first.
Okay. And now, is there a special place that you take them to when you're returning them to the wild?
Yeah, so if it's safe to, we return them back to where they were found, if possible. Obviously, if they were shot or hit by a car or poisoned or something, we don't like to return them to that same location because more than likely it'll happen again. So if it's safe, and especially if they have like a nest or we know that they have a breeding pair, we definitely try to keep them in the same habitat or territory where they came from. But if it's a migratory bird, then that doesn't matter as much. We can release them anywhere because they'll just migrate.
Okay. Do they have different mating calls, and what is the purpose of the sounds that the raptors make?
So yeah, it's all about communication. So it's all about territory and communication. So a lot of times when you hear a raptor calling, it's because they're warding off others. They're saying, hey, this is my territory. They fly around the edges of their territory, claiming it. And they're saying, don't come near me. This is my space. I own it. But they're also communicating to their mate during breeding season as well. Absolutely attracting a mate, looking for a mate, or just calling to their mate, calling to the babies. So I don't know specifically which sounds go with which communication. I don't know raptor language that well, but I know that they definitely do communicate for all of those reasons.
Right.
Definitely.
So that actually is a great lead into, Daphne said she heard raptor sounds played in parking garages to keep pigeons out. So is that effective?
Yeah, I mean, I would think after a while the pigeons would learn that it's not effective, because if they keep doing it over and over continuously, they're going to learn, hey, there's no actual raptor here. However, it would be effective initially. Definitely. So if it's like a one-time thing, or if it's a very intermittent thing, if they just do it every once in a while, but if they do it constantly, then pigeons are actually pretty smart, so they'll eventually learn that it's fake.
Okay, so that's interesting to hear because most people assume that pigeons are dumb. So
I know, which is interesting. Yeah, they've done a ton of studies on pigeons, you know, along with rats, about learning behaviors and teaching them things, and they're actually really smart animals. I mean, homing pigeons,
right?
you know, people race pigeons, and so they're smart.
Very cool. So do they mate for life?
Yes, most raptors will mate for life if they are successful. So if they have a successful nest, successful mate, good genetics, absolutely, they'll stick together. But
Wow.
obviously, if one dies for some reason, if one doesn't make it, or if they don't have a successful nest, then they'll look for other mates.
Okay. And then someone made the comment they've seen fake owls on the top of billboard signs. Do they work, the fake owls?
Again, the same thing with the raptor like calls in a parking garage. It might work initially because it might fake out the birds, but if you keep, like, if you have a fake owl on your deck, let's say, for a really long time, it's funny, you've actually seen other birds like perched on it because they realize it's a fake owl.
They get smart.
You know, yeah. So it might work initially, but if you just leave it there and nothing happens, then the birds, yeah, they're all pretty smart. They'll figure it out that it's eventually a fake one.
Wow. All right. I think when you're ready, we're ready, I think.
Okay, so the first two birds we talked about were diurnal birds, and now we're going to go to our nocturnal raptor, which is usually everyone's favorite, are the owls. And she's looking behind her right now, but she'll turn around and look in a second.
Something interesting back there, apparently.
Yes, very, very interesting right behind her. So she is an eastern screech owl. There we go. There's her cute little face. Eastern screech owls are the most common owl in this area, and they're the smallest owl that we have here. Whenever we go to schools and programs, I always like to ask the kids, raise your hand if you think she's a baby owl, and everyone typically raises their hand because for some reason, when they see a small owl, they assume it's a baby, but when they see the kestrel or the kite, they never think it's a baby, but for some reason with owls, they do. But she is actually 18 years old. So she's our oldest education bird that we have here. And she also came to us as an imprint because screech owls are the most common and they live in people's trees in their backyards. People find them all the time on the ground, or when they cut their tree down in the spring, they find baby owls. And someone kept her as a pet in a cage. And I think they posted it online. I think that's how they got caught. And the game wardens confiscated her and gave her to us. But that's why we have her. But yeah, she's the oldest bird that we have, and her name is Sweet Pea. So screech owls, their favorite food are small things like mice and lizards, little geckos, but one of their favorites are cockroaches. So you definitely want these guys because they'll eat all those things that we don't want around. And you can actually attract them to your yard or your property. You can put up screech owl boxes, you can buy them or build them yourself. They're really easy to make. And you can have a family of screech owls in your yard. But if you're interested in doing it, look up the plans online and the instructions. The best time to put them up is in November because that's when they're starting to look for territories. And bring her a little closer. That's when they're starting to look for territories and their mates. So right now, we're getting a ton of baby screech owls in. Most of them are fledgling. They're pretty old, so they're almost done with their breeding season here. So screech owls and owls in general are masters of camouflage. That's why if you've ever seen an owl in the wild, you're really lucky. A lot of people have heard owls, but to actually see one is really challenging just because they're most active when after the sun goes down and before it comes up. And they just camouflage so well, they hide so well. And Sweet Pea here, they actually took a picture of her up against a tree. And this is her sitting up against a tree, and you can see her feather plumage blends in perfectly with that tree bark. And so that's really beneficial for screech owls because they're so small, just like the kestrel, they'll have a lot of predators. And so if they can't find a natural tree cavity like a woodpecker hole, then they will just stand up next to the tree, close their eyes, and be almost totally invisible, which is really cool. Now, owls are built a lot differently than the daytime birds because they're hunting at night, so they don't have the sunlight to help them to find their food. So owls use their hearing. They have amazing hearing. So that's why they're turning their head around a lot, moving their head around, because they're listening as well as looking for everything around them to be super alert. You can see she hears something and she's looking at. But where are owl ears? If you kind of see that facial disc of feathers right behind her eyes there, those are where her ears are behind. These little feather tufts on the top of her ears are not ears. Those are just feathers called plumicorns to help her blend in. Her ears are actually asymmetrical, so I'll kind of get into the screen just to show you. Our ears are symmetrical on our heads, but where her ears are one is higher and one is lower, and they're just right behind her facial disc right there. And that facial disc is like a giant satellite dish that draws in the sound. And when the sound of her prey hits both ears at the exact same time, she knows she's right in front of it. She can swoop down and catch it. So owls are amazing at triangulating sound and pinpointing it perfectly. So that's why they're a lot more successful hunters than the daytime birds, because their hearing is so good. They don't even need to use their eyes to find their food. Up north where it snows, a lot of owls don't need to migrate because they can hunt through the snow. When voles and mice are still active under the snow cover, they just listen for those mice running underneath the snow, swoop down and grab them without ever seeing them. Barn owls have the best hearing, I think, of almost all animals on the planet. And they can hear a human heart beating up to 20 feet away, which is pretty unbelievable. So they've done a ton of studies with barn owls, put them in totally pitch black rooms, and they release live mice in there, and they can hunt every single one without ever seeing it, which is pretty unbelievable. So owls have a lot of different adaptations because of that. They also have really large eyes. That's one thing that is the main identifying characteristic of owls, and that what people love about them are their mesmerizing giant eyes. Their eyes are so big that they take up 70% of their skull. And if we had eyes like an owl, they would be as big as softballs in our head. And you're actually only seeing a fraction of her eyes on the outside. The bulk of her eye is on the inside her skull. So there's not much room for anything else. So wise as an owl is not very true. They're not the most intelligent birds, but they're good at what they do, and that's hunting and killing and surviving. And owl eyes are so large that they can't move their eyes inside their skull, so they're fixed forward. So like us, if I'm just standing here, I can roll my eyes in my head. I can look up at the ceiling, look to the side of me, look down. I can look around using my eyes. She has to turn her head in order to do that because her eyes are fixed forward. She can only see what's right in front of her. So again, that's why owls are turning their heads so often. And they can turn their head a lot further than we can. We can only go about 180 total, looking both ways. But owls have twice the amount of neck bones that we do. We only have 7 neck vertebrae, and owls have 14. And that allows them to turn their head a lot further than we can. So they can turn their head each way, left and right, 270 degrees, which is amazing. So 3/4 of the way of a circle on both directions. So that's why people think owls can turn their head all the way around and spin it, because it kind of looks like they're doing that because it's on a swivel and they can turn it so quickly. But it's close. It's not quite all the way around, but pretty close. And also their feathers are a lot different than the daytime birds. Their feathers are built to be totally silent, because if you have super loud feathers flapping in your ears, you can't hear that mouse that's under the snow in the dark or in the leaf litter in the dark. So this is a falcon feather, and falcon feathers are really stiff and hard, and they're pretty loud. So I'll try to flap it in the computer. You can hear it, it's pretty loud. Owl feathers are built a lot differently. They have a nice fringe along the leading edge of their primary flight feathers, and they're really soft and velvety. So when an owl flies, it's silent. So that comb-like fringe absorbs the sound, and they're much softer. So owls fly totally silently. So if you're out in the woods and there's an owl flying around, you'll never hear the flapping of its wings. So that's another major survival adaptation that just the owls have too. So any questions about our owls?
Yes.
I was gonna play you her sound too, but we'll get to that.
Okay, so one of the things is someone stated that they learned it's illegal to collect their feathers.
It is.
And
yes.
Why is that? So let me ask, why is that?
So the Migratory Bird Treaty Act came out earlier in the 1900s. And that was because so many birds are going extinct because people wanted their feathers. So people were killing birds just to obtain their feathers, to use them in fashion, and for anything else. And so there was a big market for bird feathers. So people would kill birds just to collect their feathers. And so they made it illegal to own feathers because of that. Because if a game warden stops you and you have 20 great horned owl flight feathers, he's going to say, how did you get those feathers? Most people, if they pick up a feather, it's not because they killed the bird, it's because they found it. But that's the reason why they just made it illegal to obtain any part of a protected bird. So you can't collect an egg, you can't collect nest, feather, anything, because they don't want it to be something that people are going to buy and turn into something that is going to hurt this species as a whole. So that's why they just made a blanket statement saying, no, it's illegal to own any sort of part of these birds to protect them. And it's good to keep feathers out in the wild because a ton of other animals use it as nesting material.
Right.
So,
right. Okay.
That's the reason.
So someone asked, so the Kestrel that you showed, can they move their eyes?
They can a little bit. Yeah, their eyes aren't as big, so they have a little bit of muscles. And their eyes are also located more on the sides of their heads rather than directly forward. So they don't need to turn their head as much because they have more field of view just when they're stationary. But yes, they can move their eyes a little bit.
Awesome. Okay. Is there a bird identification app that can listen to a sound and identify the bird, or look at a picture and it'll tell you what kind of bird it is?
I don't know if there's one for the sound, but you can
Cornell has sounds for all of
well,
them.
but they mean if you record a sound and play it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if there's one for a sound, but if you record the sound, there's a ton of different Facebook pages that you could post it on and people could help you identify it. But there are definitely ones for photos. So if you get a photo of a bird, there's a bird app called Merlin ID, and that's through Cornell. That's their app. And you can submit that photo and say where you saw it and when you saw it, and it will spit you out a list of the birds that it probably is, and the most likely one that it is, depending on how good the picture is. But yeah, and if you want to download the Sibley app, David Sibley is a really good bird identification app for pictures and sounds, and also Audubon as well has a really good one.
Wonderful. Okay. Someone stated they've been following the eagle nest in Fort Myers, Florida, and that there is an owl which has been dive bombing the adult eagles at night, often knocking them off their perches. So how strong are owls? I thought eagles were the strongest predators.
Eagles are the strongest raptor, absolutely. But they're kind of scaredy cats compared to great horned owls. Great horned owls are the fiercest, baddest, toughest raptor there is in Florida. So even though eagles are stronger, they really don't put up as much of a fight as a great horned owl will. So great horned owls will actually scare off bald eagles, and they'll steal their nests sometimes. If they're successful, they'll eat and kill their babies if they can, and steal their nests. So that's probably what it's trying to do.
So they're bullies of the raptor world, it sounds like.
They are, yeah. If you're another bird, or if you're another raptor, the great horned owl is the one to be scared of.
Wow. So
Yeah.
how much does this little guy weigh?
She weighs about 6 ounces. So yeah, just under
Interesting.
half a pound.
Okay. Does it blink?
Yes, she does
Yes.
blink.
Okay.
Raptors don't need to blink as much as we do, and it's not as involuntary as it is for humans.
Mhm.
It's more of a voluntary blink, and they don't have to blink as often. They also have a third eyelid that called the nictitating membrane, and it's a translucent eyelid that comes more diagonally across the eye, and that helps for seeing while you're flying, but to keep your eye moist and protected from things flying into it. And then also, if you're on a perch and you need to blink, but you don't want to close your eyes because you want to stay alert, you can use that nictitating membrane to blink and to keep your eye moist.
Oh, wonderful.
So yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So this is a really great question. Is it illegal for First Nations people to collect feathers? So our Native American friends.
So Native Americans always have first dibs on eagle feathers. So they have special permission from the federal government to obtain golden and bald eagle feathers for their traditional ceremonies.
Mhm.
And so if we ever get a bald eagle in to our rehab and it has to be euthanized, we have to send it to the Eagle Repository in Colorado. And the Eagle Repository collects all the eagles that have died in rehab or any eagles that have died in captivity or in the
Mhm.
wild that people send in. And then Native Americans get first dibs on all of those feathers.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to read this one out loud to bring a smile to your face. Clara said that you are beautiful as well as smart, and it is a good show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
What does the owl nest look like for this tiny little guy?
An owl nest. Is
Mhm.
that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Yeah. So owls don't build nests. They don't have nests. They find their nest in a tree cavity a lot of times. So screech owls will just go into a hole, but they actually don't collect nesting material like other birds do, like hawks. So they just go inside a hole as their nest, or great horned owls will steal nests from other birds. So if you
Okay.
see a great horned owl in a nest, it's because they stole that nest from a red-tailed hawk or a great blue heron or a bald eagle are the most common nests that they steal. So they actually didn't build those, they stole them.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Someone asked what your background is.
My background is biology. So I have a degree in biology, and then I always knew I wanted to do something with birds after I took ornithology in college. And I did some field seasons doing research with songbirds out in the field for a few seasons. And then I worked at a few different nature centers around the country. And the ones that had captive raptors, I just fell in love with working with these guys. And so then I stuck with that. And then when we moved here to Texas, I found the Raptor Center, and I was a volunteer here for a year and a half first before I was hired on.
Wonderful. So what is her wingspan?
Her wingspan is about 2 feet-ish, 18 to 24 inches.
Pretty tiny.
Yeah. But a bald eagle's wingspan can be up to 6 to 7 feet. So a lot bigger.
So how many different kinds of owls can we see here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
So we have screech owls. The most common ones, the ones that are here all year round, are screech owls, barred owls, great horned owls, barn owls are the 4 most common. Ones that you can see every once in a while that migrate through would be short-eared owls, long-eared owls, burrowing owls. And then really one that was really rare that we got into our rehab center 2 years ago was a snowy owl, because they have eruption years where they come down further south from the tundra. And we had one all the way down here in 2018.
And successfully.
And we successfully rehabbed it, and we actually flew it back on a plane on Southwest Airlines up to Minnesota to be released, because it was too late in the year to be released here, and they shouldn't be here anyway. And so we had to fly it all the way up back to Minnesota to release it. So it was really cool.
Wow, that is really cool. I got to see a barn owl up close by accident once, and it was absolutely amazing. I was looking in a house that was being built, and it was roosting up in the attic. It was just the frame of the house, and I heard this noise, and he swooped by my head, landed right in front of me, looked at me, and then flew out of the house. It was the coolest thing ever.
Wow, that's
I've
really
shared
cool.
that. It was so cool. Okay, someone said you have a photo session with the birds coming up on May 8th. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. We have photo day, and we have our birds out at our park, and you can come out and take pictures of them. And we're also open the first Saturday of every month. So we typically have a different theme, something revolved around birds or raptors. So you can also come see us on the first Saturday of the month as well. But yeah, yep, you can definitely check out our events on our Facebook page and on our website.
Wonderful. And then we have one more bird we're going to show, right? Because I just want to. Okay,
Last one. Karen's getting her out now.
Perfect. And so Sharon, okay, so this is a question that I know that you need to know the answer to. Are we able to post this video on YouTube after we're finished?
Yeah, as long as is it a private YouTube access?
It's a public channel.
Okay.
Let me know.
You could post it there for a limited amount of time. So if everyone's like people who are watching, their family members or whoever want to see it, I would say, yeah, post it maybe for a week or two give enough opportunity for people to watch and then take it down. That'd be great.
Perfect. That would be great.
Yeah.
And we'll let everybody know when that happens.
Okay, great.
And okay, so my guess is going to be no, but I did have someone ask if it's legal to have an owl as a pet.
It is not. So all the birds in North America, all wild birds in North America are protected. So it is illegal to obtain any sort of native bird. Obviously, if you find a bird that's injured or needs help, you are legally allowed to have it for 24 hours and transport it to a rehab center. But you're not allowed to keep it more than that. It's only to transport to a professional. Okay. The only birds that are not protected that live here in North America are the house sparrow, European starling, and rock pigeon. So you could have those as a pet if you wanted. But all the other birds, no, you're not allowed to.
Okay. Okay. Real quick before we get on to this beautiful guy, what about people who hunt with birds?
Yeah, so that's called falconry. So they have a special license, a falconry license from U.S. Fish and Wildlife and their state, depending on where they live. So you have to have a special license. So you have to first be an apprentice falconer for 2 years under a master falconer. And if you pass, then you're allowed to have your own bird, but there are a ton of regulations behind that. And you have to have a game warden come and inspect your property and where you're going to house the bird and how you treat it and all that stuff. So it entails a lot. So yes, it's expensive and it takes a lot of time. So yeah, falconers, it's not an easy job, but yes, people who hunt with birds are falconers. Okay,
well, let's learn more about this beautiful thing.
Absolutely. So this is Hawkeye, and she is our female red-shouldered hawk. And she is with us because she has a physical injury. So the 3 birds that you saw before were all human imprints. This one came to us from the Carolina Raptor Center because she is blind in her left eye. And we're not sure what happened to her. Again, when birds come into rehab, we never know what happens to them unless people witness it. But with her, we knew it was some sort of trauma. So either got hit by a car, hit a window, or she got in a fight with another red-shouldered hawk, which happens a lot too. So we're not sure, but her left eye is partially reabsorbed. So you can kind of see that one looks more sunken in than the other one because she totally lost her vision. So the body just reabsorbs it because it's not in use. So that's why we have her. A one-eyed hawk would not do well in the wild because that's what they use to survive, to find their food and to maneuver in their environment. You can actually release a one-eyed owl because they use their hearing to hunt and they don't rely on their vision as much to survive. So one-eyed owls live really well in the wild. but not one-eyed hawks. So that's why we have her. She is a red-shouldered hawk, and red-shouldered hawks are the medium-sized hawk that live here in this area, and they're fairly common. They're here all year round, and they like to live in more dense woods habitat, so they don't like a prairie habitat. They like the deeper woods with water. So wherever there is a stream or a creek or a lake, river, they like to live in the trees near water. Let me give her a little more slack and untwist her. So their food source is slightly different. So one of their favorite foods are snakes, actually. She loves snakes. Karen brings us snake skins from another nature center where she volunteers, and that's like her favorite enrichment is snake skin. She rips it into a million pieces. And then when we actually have safe snake to feed her, we feed her snake. That's one of her favorite foods. But in the wild, that's also their favorite food. I'd see red-shouldered hawks with snakes all the time, taking them to their babies. But she'll like other reptiles, like lizards and amphibians, frogs, salamanders, maybe a fish every once in a while. Crayfish are also another one of her favorites. Karen also brings her crayfish, puts it in her water pan, and she goes down and grabs them and eats them. She loves those crawdads. So she, again, has that nice rusty orangish chest. That's what all red-shouldered adults have. And they have black and white mottling on their wings and a black and white banded tail. And they're named for kind of that rusty patch that kind of looks like their shoulder blade. That's why they're named red-shouldered hawks, but it's more their wrist where that red patch is. So that's why they're named that. But these guys are super vocal. They make more of a screaming sound all the time. So yeah, another daytime bird that you see. Most people know the red-tailed hawk. That's the most common and the largest hawk. You see those guys along the highways, sitting up on the telephone poles. And unfortunately, they like to hunt along the roadways because of litter. People throw things out their window that attract rats and squirrels and mice, and it's an easy place to find all those animals. So they get hit by cars a lot, unfortunately. Yeah, a lot of people know the red tails. Any questions about our hawks?
So this is a great question in general, but what should you do if you come across a chick on the ground, you don't see a nest nearby, and you don't see any other a parent or any other similar birds in the area?
So you definitely want to call a professional. So call a rehabber and they will help you. You can actually make, if it's a baby, you can make an artificial nest, and we make, if it's a big owl, we put them in a laundry basket and attach the laundry basket up into the tree somewhere and put them back. If it's a screech owl, we have screech owl boxes, and we'll just put them in a screech owl box in the same tree or nearby, and the parents will come back and take care of them. It's very rare that parents abandon babies. That almost never happens. If they're going to abandon the nest, it's typically when it's still eggs, and if the eggs are infertile, or if there's a ton of disturbance going on, like a ton of human activity, or it was there's a lot of predators around, they might decide to go somewhere else. But it's very rare that a bird is going to abandon a nestling or a fledgling. So it's most likely the parents around. We get that call all the time. People are like, well, I don't see the parents. And I'm like, well, it's because you're standing out there. If you're out there, you're not going to see the parents. So you have to stand way far back and kind of hide yourself to look to find them, because typically they're still there. So re-nesting is the best thing. The only reason why you would want them to go to rehab is if they were dehydrated, skinny, if they were actually injured. So obviously the general public isn't going to know how to identify that a lot. So definitely call a professional. And we have a ton of rehabbers in this area, so there's a lot of resources.
Awesome. I noticed this myself. So it's fascinating how the head will stay absolutely stationary and the body moves, but the head doesn't. Is this something that's common for all birds, or is it just raptors?
Yes, all birds can do this. And it's a really cool adaptation, because when you're flying, especially if you're going after a bug that's moving a lot or a squirrel that's really fast, you want to keep your head locked in on that prey item. So they can lock their head in on whatever they're looking at, and then their body adjusts to where they need to go so they can move their body underneath their head. So yeah, it's very beneficial while hunting, so you can still fly and move your body around, but keep your head totally still and locked in on what you're after.
Wonderful. So do you provide live prey for them to hunt?
For our education birds, we do not provide live prey because it's dangerous for them, because they have some reason why they can't hunt live prey. They're either imprints or they physically don't have the ability to do that, so we don't give them live prey. But we do give it to our rehab birds. So the birds that are out in the flight cages and we are testing to make sure that they can hunt before we release them, absolutely, we give them live prey to make sure they can do it.
Awesome. Okay. Janet said she saw a raptor eating a dove in the parking lot next to the store that they shop at. And they watched it. It was fascinating. Okay, this is a great question. Is there anything that you can advise us that maybe we as the human race are doing without knowing that it's causing these birds to be endangered?
Well, I think a lot of it is habitat destruction. So that's not necessarily an individual thing. That's
Right.
more, the human race. Unfortunately, humans are encroaching every single day on all wild animals' habitat. And so that's the biggest thing is habitat destruction, because we're constantly developing houses and shopping malls and all these things that we're building. So that's really the biggest thing. I know in other countries, they have bigger problems, like in Africa, poisoning is a huge issue with their vulture population. There's a ton of endangered vultures over there. And electrocution is a big issue because they don't protect their power lines like we do. We get some birds that are electrocuted, but in Africa it happens way more often because they just have exposed live wires all over the place.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things that we could be doing to help these guys, but it's more of a bigger issue than more individualistic. But individuals can help obviously by doing small things that I'm sure all of you are doing, by not littering, not using poison, not using sticky traps, all those little things, feeding birds, providing water, providing shelter, providing native plants, all that kind of stuff helps.
Okay. So you mentioned the Screech Owl boxes earlier. Now, do they need to be mounted in a tree, or can they be mounted on the side of a house? Like, is there a particular place that's better to put them if you would want to help provide a home for them?
The best place is about 10 feet up in an oak tree, if possible, near a branch for the babies to jump out on once they fledge the box. But some people don't have nice big trees, so you can actually mount it on a pole, which is the next best option, with a predator guard around it. So like a squirrel or a raccoon can't climb up the pole.
Right.
But a tree would definitely be the best option because that's the most natural. That's what they're used to.
Okay. Someone stated that they rescue feral cats and that the birds have learned not to nest in their yard.
Very good. Yes, we don't like cats and birds together.
Yeah. Lynn said, fabulous presentation. Thanks so much. Fascinating. Such an educational presentation. Thank you. This has been so interesting today. Will owls nest in a box? I think yes. And because they said they've seen some that people have made on Nextdoor. Wonderful presentation. Thank you for your work with these beautiful birds. Thank you so much. I think that covers all of our questions. And Sandy, we'll keep you posted on when this will be will be up, and we'll send it out via our email and let you know when it will come down. So I'll make sure that we follow that guideline. Hey everyone, if you want to take yourselves off mute, Loved it. Make some noise for Elizabeth. She did a fantastic job.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody. Thank